Hello again, this is my first ever writing tips video. I'm coming to you live from Wave Break Studio in sunny Walton-on-the-Naze. I'm excited about this project. It seems only right that I make this video. You see, the world of fiction, the world of writing has been good to me, so it seems decent that I give something back. So I'll be sharing some hints and tips, and you never know, guys, I might share one or two of my trade secrets. The first thing I want to talk about is writer's block. Not necessarily overcoming writer's block, but this is how I address the subject. I've got two methods for dealing with this, but please don't attempt them both at the same time, for one will surely cancel the other out. So the first thing you must do if the dreaded WB strikes, and you don't always see it coming, is do what I do and ignore it and tell yourself, as I tell myself, that writer's block doesn't exist. It just means that on that particular day, it wasn't meant to be. It might be a week, but it just means it wasn't meant to be. I started Essex Man Blues at the age of 35, but I could read or write by the time I was 7, so that's the best part of 30 years in which I wrote no fiction at all, and I never felt like I was missing out. I was always doing other interesting stuff. I didn't feel like I was letting myself down. It just meant that my time hadn't come yet. The planets hadn't aligned. So yes, if the ideas aren't coming, the words aren't flowing, go and do something else. You could do some household chores, or better still, go and do something you enjoy. Go for a swim, go for a walk, go for a run. I love walking. And you may find that doing something you enjoy makes the ideas start to flow again. You might find that this helps you reclaim your mojo. But even if it doesn't, you will spend your day doing something you enjoy, which is far better than staring at a blank page in a state of nervous frustration, because life really is too short for that. If, however, a month goes by and no ideas are coming, you might want to resort to Plan B. Plan B means going down to your local Sainsbury's superstore, or maybe WH Smith, go to the magazine rack, go to the journal shelf, and find one of many writers' magazines. These magazines are often loaded with short story competitions. Now, the good thing about this is that you will have a genre to work in and you'll have a word limit. Now, you may say this is a limitation. I find that having parameters like these to work to can really sharpen your focus. Repeat this process 2 or 3 times and you may find a good story. You might find the idea for a bigger project and you might just win a cash prize too. Hopefully this helps beat the old writer's block. Next, I'd like to talk about reviews. It can be quite a thrill to find out that your work is being reviewed or that it has been reviewed, but take my advice. It's not easy advice, but take it anyway. Don't read them. Don't read your own reviews. Why? This sounds crazy, you might be thinking. Well, no, it's not crazy because, think about it, it's your book. You drew up the concept. You created these characters. You understand their motivations better than anyone alive. You understand your characters' hopes, dreams, and fears better than anyone else. So, really, what can you learn from reading somebody else's take on it? And the answer is surely nothing. But this is useless advice because I know that when you find out your book has been reviewed, if someone calls you up and say, hey, your book's been reviewed in the Times Literary Supplement, I know you're going to be down the newsagent buying it that day. So just supposing you rush down to the newsagents, you buy the paper magazine, you read the review, you don't get quite as many stars as you wanted to, or you feel the reviewer didn't quite get what you were aiming for. I always cast my mind back to an interview with Gene Simmons I read about 20 years ago, and it was pointed out to Gene Simmons, the singer from the rock band Kiss, that Kiss have never been a critic's favourite. And of course, Gene Simmons gave the excellent reply that he doesn't care what critics say about his albums as long as they pay for them first. A brilliant response, I'm sure you'd agree. Also, it's worth bearing in mind that this was 20 years ago. Now, in the internet age, everyone's a critic. But remember, that person who wrote a review, good or bad, as long as it's got verified purchase next to it on Amazon or wherever, it means they paid for it. So great, just be grateful they paid for it, because if people are buying your books, it's all leading up to that day when you can concentrate on writing full time. Remember, guys, this is a business. I know it seems a bit cold to say it's all about the money, but like I say, we all want to reach that day where we can do this full time. So yeah, thank the person for their money. I'm going to talk about learning from the masters now, or learning from the master, and in this case, the master is the excellent American writer Stephen King. Some years ago, Stephen King wrote a writing memoir on writing. I only discovered this about 4 or 5 years ago. I bought the audiobook version of On Writing. It cost me £48. Now, that may sound like a lot for an audiobook, but believe me when I say it is the best £48 I've ever spent. You could pay much, much, much more than that to go and do a degree in English literature or creative writing from a poly red brick university, and you would learn far, far less. One of the things Stephen King talks about, for example, very early on in his writing memoir, is the outright evil of adverb modification, putting ly at the end of certain words or using words with ly at the end of them. And it's true. If someone slams a door, do we need to know that he slammed the door forcefully? No, we don't. If someone says, I hate you and I never want to see you again, do we need to know that they said that angrily? No, we don't need to know that. So something that takes about 5 minutes to read can improve your writing for the rest of your life. He also tells people that his definition of a good writer, and this kind of ties in with what I said about Gene Simmons and the whole reviews thing in the last section, he says that his idea of a good writer is someone who makes money from it. Now, some people say that's a bit cold-hearted, a bit mean-spirited. Some might say that's a slightly artless way of looking at it. I don't agree. I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's certainly a way. If you can set yourself a goal of making some money out of your writing, I would say that will improve your focus and give you a goal to work towards. One of the things he said that I didn't quite agree with, I guess I have to be honest, is that he says that there's two things you need to do to be a writer. One is you need to read a lot. One is you need to write a lot. Now, where I came into conflict with this is that if you're writing a lot, you will read a lot because you will read your own work. I'm a firm believer in reading as you go. At the end of each chapter, read it at least once to make sure it makes sense and make sure the flow of the story is there. But after, say, 6 hours of rereading your own work, getting rid of every unnecessary that or which, and then perhaps putting that or which back, getting rid of all your words with ly in them, do you really feel like reading someone else's work? Because the chances are you may look at it with the same analytical eye, and I think you would clear your head by doing something else of an evening if you've been writing and editing all day. Another thing he says in the On Writing compilation, which I strongly agree with, is that you must, and I quote, free yourself from affectation. Don't try to be something you're not. Don't use words if you don't know what they mean. Don't use turns of phrase if you don't know where they come from or how to use them correctly. It just makes you look silly, basically. It makes you look an amateur. I'll tell you a little story now. There is a blogger who may still be writing today I used to follow, and this is a dark secret of mine. I used to read her work purely for amusement. She's a terrible writer. And what she would do is each week she'd learn a slightly interesting or unusual word, and then she'd use it repeatedly throughout that week's blog. And it made for a poor blog. One week she learnt the word integral and used it 3 words in a review of a new single. And in the following week, she liked this word so much that she used the word integral to describe a radio station. It was much to my amusement, and I guess we're all guilty of taking comfort from the fact that there's somebody worse off than ourselves, but it made for really poor writing because she was using words, she used to use turns of phrase, but she didn't actually understand. It makes for bad writing. Be yourself. Speak with your own tongue. Speak with language you know. It makes for a much, much better story or sentence or book. So yeah, free yourself from affectation. There's loads more, but I urge you to go and buy a copy of On Writing by Stephen King. It is the best £48 you will ever spend. It may have gone up since then, but you get the picture. Now I'm going to talk briefly about the age-old argument of show, don't tell. And the reason I'm going to talk about this for a short time only is that this is something that gets far too much attention. I think it's lazy critiquing and it can lead to over-analysis of your work. Please don't go through every line, paragraph and chapter of your book making sure you have shown rather than told. First of all, it may drive you crackers, and secondly, it won't necessarily advance your story. In fact, it probably won't. Because what you need to be looking for as you read as you go, remember to read as you go, look for shape, look for flow, look for meter, and look for rhythm. Anything that breaks up that rhythm is a bad thing and is best avoided. If your male protagonist goes to buy a train ticket and he spots a pretty girl behind the counter and he smiles at her, but she doesn't smile back, just say Dave was disappointed that the pretty girl didn't smile back at him, and then let him get on his train and get on with the story. But if your character later on overcomes a major crisis of confidence, if there's a big turning point, yes, you mustn't say Bob was delighted that he was confident again, or Dave was delighted that he'd regained his courage. That is poor storytelling. It's not just a case of show, don't tell. You may need to find a more artful way to reveal that information, but otherwise, don't beat yourself up over it. It may break up the rhythm of your story, and that can only ever be a bad thing. Let's talk physical descriptions. You need to know exactly what your characters look like. That way, you'll know how they're going to act, you'll know what they're going to say. I was very lucky. I remembered reading that Ian Fleming had said that he wanted 007 to resemble the then popular singer Hoagie Carmichael in terms of his physical features and his dress sense. It's a great idea that because you then hit the ground running. So I decided that I wanted Dave Hunter to be Snail's Pace Slim from the rock band The Hamsters. I decided that the character of Mick was going to be played by Nick Frost, if Essex Man Blues ever made it to the big screen. And I decided that Danny was Withnail from the film Withnail and I, or maybe he was Gary King as depicted by Simon Pegg in the film The World's End. Great, I know what my characters look like. Then I got to Norman Layer. I decided that he would be played by Larry Lamb in the event of Essex Man Blues ever making it to the big screen, which sadly hasn't happened yet, but we all live in hope. Slouch, well, he was someone I used to drink with in my local, a somewhat disreputable character I knew, so I had that in my mind. Left-handed Pete, he was a distant relative of mine, so that was easy. He existed in my mind's eye, and like I say, once they exist in your mind's eye, I knew exactly what I wanted them to say or how they would react to certain situations. I know what they look like. I know how they act. You really get to hit the ground running that way. So once you decided who you're going to base your characters on or which actor you would like to see play these characters in a possible big screen adaptation of your book, maybe print off a picture of them, have it by your work desk. You really do hit the ground running then, and you will find that the dialogue and the actions come a lot more easily. Cheers.